Well, my name's Josh. This is All Things Secured, and we are jumping into cloud security. I want to talk about cloud security. I'm going to spend hopefully about 20, 30 minutes just kind of walking through some very important keys to securing all of your documents and files in the cloud. And then by the end, we will have some time for Q&A. I am by myself here, so I can't monitor the chat that's happening, so please be nice. And also, if you've got questions, just recognize that I won't be able to look at it until we get to the very end. So questions might get buried if you ask them too late in this whole process. All right, let's go ahead and start with a couple things. First of all, I want to express that what we're talking about is personal cloud storage, not enterprise. That's important because the way that companies treat enterprise accounts is different than the way they treat personal accounts. And so some of what I say won't apply to enterprise, but definitely to personal. And so we're just talking personal here. I also want to recognize the fact that this, if you are like a super tech savvy user, this is not a super advanced presentation. This will be fairly basic, but this is meant to give you a good foundation or to share with somebody in your family who maybe uses, cloud storage in a way that is just not secure, not private, and not a great, just not a way to do it. So I want to make sure that we've got those two things clear up front. I also want to thank Proton and Proton Drive for their sponsorship of this presentation. This is not a commercial for Proton Drive. We're going to be talking about a lot of different services that are available to use and how to use them. And what we talk about applies to all of them. I'm just going to be using Proton Drive as my example all the way through. All right. Most of us have used or are using at some point some kind of cloud storage provider, whether that's Google Drive, you see here, OneDrive, Dropbox, Proton Drive. And the reason that we're using that is because it is great for collaboration. It is great for syncing. It is great for general file access anywhere we are on pretty much any device that we have, which is both very convenient, but also presents a number of security and privacy risks. The problem, and this is what I've seen over and over again, is that there are too many of us that have turned our cloud storage into basically that desk junk drawer. We don't really know what we put in there. We just maybe it's email attachments. It's just files that we ended up creating. It's not very well organized. It's definitely unsecured. And we just it's an afterthought, because it's not really on our computer. It's just somewhere else, so it doesn't really matter. But it does. And we're going to be covering 4 keys to cloud security here. And they are account access. Who has access to your account? How have you locked down just your general cloud storage account? And then go down and look at individual file access. A lot of people share files or share folders and then forget that file or that folder remains shared indefinitely, and again, presents a risk. We need to talk about storage strategy. How are you storing your files, and not thinking of all files being equal? Everything just needs to be put into OneDrive, or everything needs to put it into Google Drive. There are different ways to think about it. And then finally, surface exposure. How are you exposing yourself to additional risk without realizing it? And I think a lot of us do that. So let's go ahead and run through this. Account access. Excuse me. One of the things that we tend to do is just create these accounts and rarely think about how we lock them down. So if we're using Proton Drive as an example, if I go into my account and password in the settings page, I want to make sure that my 2-factor authentication is on. And you see here, I have set up 2 of my security keys. I do that all the time. That's, if you're curious, that's these keys right here. There, I don't know if you can, it's blurred here. There we go. It's these USB keys. I love YubiKey, but there are plenty of others. I've got one that I keep in my laptop and then one that I keep in a safe place. So essentially, I just want to be able to have that backup, but I also have it for Brave. I've created a passkey. And then you can notice that I turned off the Authenticator app. I always say that your security is only as strong as your strongest form of backup. And so Authenticator app for me is turned off. Likewise, I don't want account recovery. I don't want a recovery email address. I don't want a recovery phone number. There are a multitude of reasons why I don't want that. But I think the number one reason is because I've already secured it with a 2FA key, which I want to be my highest standard. And thankfully, I can go in and do data recovery. So I've got a phrase, I've got a recovery file that I've downloaded so that if somehow I lose my keys, I still have a backup and a way to recover my data. You can do the same thing with Google Drive. If you go into your Google account settings, you'll see here that I have two-step verification on with passkeys and security keys. And I have skipped password when possible, and I've removed my recovery phone and my recovery email. So you have this same type of stuff available to you no matter what you use, even if it's Dropbox or OneDrive or pCloud. You just want to make sure that you are securing the overall account, because if you're not locking that down, everything else that we're going to be talking about is pointless. So number two, let's talk about, wow, all right, making sure you guys can hear everything. I just checked over at the comments here. Yes, you can hear everything. Good. I'm glad the audio is working. File access. So the way that we interact, like a lot of the value of cloud storage is the ability to be able to share files, both, between devices, as well as sharing files outside of your account. So for, let's say, Google Drive, that looks like this, where if I just wanted to share my basketball coaching folder, I can type in the email of somebody who I want to share it with, or I can create a general access link where anyone with the link can view or edit, and then I copy that link. This is good. It's not bad, but there are more secure ways to do that. You've got the general access link right here. In Google Drive, in Proton Drive, you'll see here that I have very similar things, and this is going to be across the board. There's a lot of other different secure drives that do a similar thing here, where you can share with somebody, or you can create and activate a public link where anyone on the internet with that link can view or edit again. But there is a slight difference in all of this. You can set a password or expiration date. And that is really important because that is part of going beyond just end-to-end encryption. We're going to be talking about encryption in just a moment, but being able to set a password adds that additional layer of security to anything you want to share. And then that expiration date is important because, like I said in the opening, most of us, or a lot of people, end up sharing files or links and they are indefinitely shared. And that is a security risk. So speaking of encryption, every single one of these major, actually I would venture to guess every single one of the cloud storage providers provides some kind of encryption. And we're going to talk about different kinds, but encryption does not equal end-to-end encryption. And that's one of the reasons why I do like Proton Drive. And I think it should be part of your stack. It doesn't have to replace Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive, but I do think that there is a value of having a secure end-to-end encrypted secure drive that you use for certain things. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So for a lot of you that have known that, are in this world, this will be nothing new. But if you don't know, there are actually two types of encryption that usually happen whenever you're dealing with cloud storage. You have TLS and AES 256. TLS is for data in transit. So whenever data is moving between your device and the cloud, or whether it's going between some server somewhere and the server for the app itself when you're opening that app. And then AES 256 is for data at rest. That's the data that's just sitting on the server, or if it just happens to be sitting on your device. These are the two different types. And like I said, that TLS stands for Transport Layer Security. That is when the data is moving in between all of these different places. Whereas you have Advanced Encryption Standard, which is for data at rest, 256 bits. That means the key is 256 bit long, extremely secure. And all of these providers use advanced encryption standards. So why would one provider be better than the other? And it all boils down to one question: who holds the encryption key? And for fear of, just having a dad joke here, I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. This right here is the key question. You get it? The key question. I know I'm hilarious. And not to put down any of these, Google Drive, OneDrive, and Dropbox protect your files from outsiders. End-to-end encrypted storage protects your files from outsiders and the storage provider itself. And that is super important, especially when you consider, and this is a big thing that we probably wouldn't have been talking about a year or 2 years ago, but we are moving into an era where the files that we store in the cloud are potentially being scanned. AI is training off of a lot of these files, and there's really a question about who owns the data that you put into Google Drive or that you put into OneDrive. Do you actually own that data? And then do you know for sure whether they're scanning it or not? And the reason I say that is because there have been reports of people who have had their stuff scanned. For some reason, it gets flagged, and then the entire account gets taken down. They lose their data. This was a gentleman in Japan who had the same thing happen to him. I'm not trying to scare you, like this happens rarely, but it does happen. And it begs that question, how are these automated systems scanning the data that we upload to the major cloud providers? And then how is it being used for AI training? These are questions that are still kind of unclear. And if you're a cynic, you're saying it is used for training, it is no good, they own the data, you don't. I'm not that far into the cynicism, but I do have a lot of questions about that, and it does make me pause about what kind of data I want to put out there. So this is especially important considering that for many of us, we throw into our drive stuff like our bank statements, our tax documents, our medical forms, legal documents, client files, mortgage documents, even ID document scans. I used to keep my passport scans, driver's license scans, birth certificate, marriage certificate, all of these things. I wanted to make sure that I had a digital backup of it, and I kept it for a long time in Google Drive, and I don't do that anymore. And I'll explain a little bit of how I do that, because you need to start thinking about your storage strategy, all right? And the best way to really think about this, especially when you're dealing with a load of different files, right? Whether it's personal, whether even sometimes you keep professional stuff on your personal storage, which I don't necessarily recommend that you do, but you need to be thinking about what are you actually protecting against? And this is the type of question that we need to think about anytime we're dealing with our own privacy and security and our data. Is it's like, okay, we could go, like there is an extreme version of privacy and security that says, hey, I am going to, at all costs, protect every single thing, but not every single piece of data, not every single bit of what we own needs to be protected in Fort Knox, right? Which, you know, if English isn't your first language or you're not an American, that just means like the most secure place that is possible. I like to think of it as 3 buckets. What goes where? And for me, I've basically broken it down into 3 different places: convenience, security, and then critical. Let's talk about what those might be. And yours might be a little bit different. I'm just giving you an example of how I would want to set this up, okay? I put in convenience the low sensitivity stuff that would be public facing, that if it was exposed and shown to the rest of the world, I would just go, yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know why you care, but here it is. And then if I have encrypted backups, let's say of my phone or something like that, I might put it there if I so desire. On the secure side, I'm looking at things like my financial documents, my family records, legal documents, ID backups. I want to be able to access these, right? So especially those ID backups as I travel around internationally, I want to be able to, you know, when we're dealing with visa stuff and all this, I want to have direct, immediate access to scans of my kids' passports, for example, or my marriage certificate or their birth certificates, because those have actually been needed at certain times. But I don't need everything accessible. For me, there's a critical bucket that doesn't even go online. It doesn't even go in the cloud whatsoever. These are things like crypto seed phrases, super high risk documents, and what I call my death file. I've talked about this years and years ago. You may not even remember it, but I keep like my death file on this, like it's an offline storage. Let's see, can we not be, there we go. Hopefully that's not, but this is, I just keep it on a USB drive that is that's password protected. So you have to physically input that password. But you could do the same thing on just a traditional offline drive. The whole point of what I'm trying to do with this critical is make sure that, one, it's not just in one place, so that if it does get lost or inaccessible, that I haven't lost everything, but it is offline, those super critical places. So I've got those three buckets: things that are public facing, things that I need secured, and things that are absolutely critical that I want to make sure are not even available online, so there is no risk of, a hacker or somebody getting into that, or at least it would be extremely hard for them to do so. Now, there are a couple ways to go about this, right? A lot of us just put everything in the first bucket. There are ways that you can take and, let's say, and I've already seen some people in the comments talking about this, where you can take and add additional encryption on top of the regular storage providers. So right here you see Google Drive, but you can do the same thing with OneDrive, with Dropbox and all that. And that is adding something like Cryptomator or Veracrypt, which amazingly are free and open source. And what this essentially does, and I just created this graphic, is it creates a lockbox that you put inside of the Google Drive lockbox. So like I said, Google Drive is encrypted. It's just that Google has the right to be able to kind of hold on to those encryption keys. Whereas if you encrypt the files that you put into Dropbox, they're encrypting it, but now any data that they have that's in there, they can't scan it. They can't do anything with it. And so this is definitely an option that is great if you're like, nope, I use Google Drive, I use Dropbox, I have to use these, and I would rather keep it secure, and I don't want to spend an extra dollar on it. I get that. Veracrypt and Cryptomator are things that you they're not, because they are open source. I wouldn't necessarily, they're great. They're not that hard to set up, but it's not something that, like, my parents, my mom and dad, would have an easy time putting together and trying to figure out, how do I make sure that this is encrypted? So there is a little technical knowledge that you need to have in order to do that, but that's a great option. And then you have an option like Proton Drive. And I'm going to take a moment, if you don't mind, to just explain and thank Proton for sponsoring this video. They are a fully encrypted cloud storage. They do end-to-end encrypt all of the files that you have. A lot of great features involved in that I've already shown you. They have desktop and mobile devices, and you can give them a try. If you want to add that extra security bucket that is different than your convenience bucket, you can do it for only $1 using allthingssecure.com/Proton Drive. That is a special $1 to get started link. And so thank you to Proton Drive. This is the solution that I use. I genuinely use. It's on my phone, it's on my computer, and I've used them for years now because I just love what Proton does, and I do trust the company as a whole. And so I'm willing to put in and know that whatever I put into my Proton Drive is going to be secure. So if you haven't tried it before, definitely give them a try and see what you think. And then, yeah, we can talk about like different strategies for moving over files. But we'll just continue on from here. So we've got Proton Drive. Let me just kind of walk you through what it looks like to be using a secure storage, and how this happens on a surface exposure. So you need to be asking yourself, where do you need to have access to files? And then next, where don't you? Because a lot of us, we just want to have access to everything everywhere. And that, again, could be convenient, but it's not secure, it's not private, it's not the best way to do it. I need to think to myself, okay, my kids have, the iPad, the family iPad that we use. Do I really need to have my Proton Drive app downloaded to my kid's iPad? And the answer is no, I don't want to have it there. Do I really need to have it even on my phone as I'm traveling internationally? And the answer to that is also no. So whenever I'm traveling, I will go in and delete certain apps before I go, because I have had those cases where I've been asked by another country's security officer to open up my phone and open up and show them things. And I don't want them to even have remotely an idea that I have a secure cloud storage provider, because they're trained to look for that stuff and to immediately open it. And so I don't like having that. So let's just say that you were to go into Proton Drive for this $1 deal, and you were to go in and you were to download their Windows app or their Mac app. It basically just acts really in the background. So this same thing, you're going to see I've got both my Proton Drive up here and my Google Drive, you can see, are both kind of keeping all my files synced. So if I create a file that gets put into either Proton Drive or Google Drive, they automatically stay synced and up to date. And so now when I open up my Finder, this is obviously from Mac, but the same thing applies even on Windows, you will see that I have in my locations a Proton Drive account. You can do the same for pretty much any single one of these. I'm just showing you for Proton Drive. The same can be done for Google Drive, which, by the way, I have no idea why my Google Drive was removed from locations. I can't find it. Little side note. So if you got a tip for me, you can let me know. But I mean, whether it's sync.com, pCloud, OneDrive, like all of these can act as a drive location, almost as if you were just plugging in one of these external drives into your computer. That's the way it looks. And you'll also notice that, and again, the same for a lot of these cloud providers, the files are not, they are downloaded to your device only when needed. So you're not keeping a copy of all your files in every single one of these places. It's just giving you a directory, and then when you need that file, it will download that file. And that's a better way to do it. You don't want to keep a copy on every single one. It's going to waste space on your devices, and it's also not very secure. With something like a mobile device, right? You've got the same access to files, just like I do here. So I can go in, you can see that I want to make sure that I keep all my tax documents into Proton Drive. And so these are the folders that I share with my accountant to make sure that he has everything that he needs. But even when I go in on the photos side, I can back up and do back up all of my photos to Google Drive or to Proton Drive instead of to iCloud. You don't have to use iCloud to back up all of your photos. There are a lot of different options, and Proton Drive is one of them where it will just automatically back up all of your photos. And I really love that. But here's the key that you get with something like Proton Drive that you don't get with a lot of these others, and that is additional security settings. So if you look here, for my login, I'm in my settings, I can add a PIN and a Face ID, which is not only just using the Face ID. I set that PIN code, and that PIN code, it doesn't have to be and shouldn't be the same as the PIN code that I use to log into my phone as my phone PIN. So this is a separate PIN that you can set. It doesn't have to be 4 digits. It can be whatever you want, but it is a numeric PIN that you set that gives you access to the files on your drive. So I would make sure that if you do have any kind of cloud storage app on your mobile devices, make sure that you're securing it in any way possible. If you use Proton Drive, make sure you turn these on. If you use Google Drive, you don't have as many options, but you could, for example, if you hold on to the Google Drive app, you can force Face ID for something like that. I'm getting over something, I'm sorry. But yeah, this is what we're looking, because we want to make sure when we're looking at our buckets that we are keeping things that need to be secure in a secure place. And for me, that looks like having 3 different locations. I still use Google Drive, right? I still use Google Drive to store and collaborate on a number of different things. It's been convenient. I've got an enterprise plan, and so it works. But then I have my Proton Drive that I have separately that is for my personal secure storage. And then on top of that, I have the offline, which is my critical. So that's my storage strategy. There's a lot of people I know that have maybe a little bit more complicated, or maybe they just keep it all in Google Drive and they just secure things with Cryptomator or VeriCrypt. There are different ways that you can do it. I just want you to start thinking about how can I strategically think about what I'm storing in the cloud, how I organize it, such that I have things that are publicly facing that I can keep anywhere, but the things that are security related that I need to keep secure, I am being very intentional about how I am securing those. So again, we are looking at account access, individual file access, storage strategy, and surface exposure. I'm coming to the end here, and we are going to be talking and maybe answering a few questions here. Just for, I received this question, or I'd seen this question, so I just want to point it out. Migrating data like storage data is a little bit different, but not as like, migrating, let's say, a password manager. So a password manager file is generally pretty small because it is just a CSV, it's just a Sheets file that you would migrate from one password manager to another. When we're dealing with migrating files from a cloud storage provider to another cloud storage provider, or from your device to a cloud storage provider, generally we're talking about terabytes worth of data, which makes this a bigger process. It's not an impossible process. So for Google, they have something called Google Takeout, where you could go in and you could ask Google to take all of your files, bunch it all together into one file for takeout, and then you can take and upload all of those files. If you wanted to do a full-on switch from something like Google Drive to Proton Drive, that's how you would do it. I don't necessarily know if I recommend going that far. You can for sure, but then there are other ways. Like I was talking with somebody else who was early in the comments here at the beginning, just asking about pCloud, and some of them like pCloud. I think you can actually do it within the settings where they will go in you give them basically access to your Google Drive, which can be a little scary, but they will do it without you having to download that file to your computer and bring it back up. So there are a number of different ways to move your files over. Just know that you're dealing with a lot larger files, and so it's going to take a lot longer. All right, I want to end this very simply with some next steps that are related to those 4 keys. These are next steps that are important regardless of which cloud storage provider you use. These are things like setting up 2FA on any cloud storage account, any of them. I don't care if you use Google Drive. I don't care if you use iCloud. I don't care if you use Proton Drive. I wholeheartedly believe that if you want to have any semblance of security for your personal data, you need to have 2FA, and not backed up with SMS text or anything like that. I want to remove my phone number, remove my email. With Google, you have that ability to set up 2FA. With iCloud and your account on Apple, you can now use keys like this that I was talking about to secure your account. They let you do that. And then same with Proton Drive that I showed you. You can set up these keys to make sure that your files, specifically on Proton Drive, are entirely encrypted. The same thing goes for iCloud. If you use your 2 keys and you turn on, I think it's advanced data protection, your data can be end-to-end encrypted, but it's not end-to-end encrypted on something like Google Drive. Next, it says 1, but it's actually supposed to be 2. Review permissions on your existing files and docs. In Google Drive, this looks something like this, where if you've got a folder that's just kind of gray, like you see here on the top, then that means that folder is not being shared. But if you see that little human icon in one of the folders, that means that something in that folder or the folder itself is being shared externally. And hard as I looked, I could be wrong about this. I tried doing a little bit of research, but hard as I looked, there was no way to just see at a glance everything that is being shared on your Google Drive. And that kind of scares me, honestly, because when you think about something like Proton Drive, there's literally a section that just says shared. And I can go in and look at the links that I have shared and notice, actually, I noticed as I was doing this, I was like, oh man, these I shared a couple years ago. I didn't set an expiration date when I should have. And so I need to go in and remove those share links because that is a security exposure for me. That is a risk having these links open and in the wild. I want to make sure that I lock that down by removing those shared links. So go in and review the permissions on existing files and docs and remove what doesn't need to be there. Number 3, set up a separate secure cloud storage, right? That could be something like Cryptomator on a Google Drive. It could be, and what I recommend is a Proton Drive account. They're not that expensive. And it offers an end-to-end encrypted way to know that, okay, these are the files. And it also even mentally compartmentalizing and saying, these are my secure files. And then these are the files that are public facing, that if this whole thing, my whole Google Drive was compromised, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to ruin my digital identity and my digital life. Whereas I want to make sure that anything that could ruin my digital life is put in a separate secure cloud storage. And then finally, only keep files where they need to be kept, right? You can look at, what you have available on your computer, on your mobile device, on your tablet device, especially when you're traveling internationally. This is something that's, near and dear to me because I do travel a lot, but maybe you don't do that. And maybe it's more just about, what you have on your professional device versus what you have on your personal device. only keep files where they need to be kept, because keeping them everywhere just increases your risk exposure. So that is Cloud Storage Security 101. Right? I mean, there is obviously a lot more that we could talk about, and maybe I'll try to answer some questions here, but that is kind of the basics, in hopes that you can turn something that is unorganized and unsecured into something that is both organized, thoughtful, you understand what strategy you have, so that it can be secured. Whew. All right. I hope that, like, it takes a little while to put together those kind of presentations. And if that's been useful, if you don't mind just go ahead and liking this video so that, others can see it. It's really helpful. Thank you to all of you who've been here live, and I hope this has been enjoyable. I'm going to look, let me see if I can pull up some Q&A here. I think, let's see. Yes, so let me see if this will do this. Yeah, Card Half says, talking about Google Takeout, depending on how large the size of your file, it may need to be broken into smaller chunks for download. So I've seen it basically where it will come in as Google Takeout 1 folder, Google Takeout 2 folder, upward, and beyond that. So yes, it could be multiple files that you have to download there. All right. It's now two-step to save. I'm not familiar with this, using Apple iOS Proton Drive, but sadly with the last update, they removed the access to File Manager. I'm not sure why that would be the case, but thanks for letting me know. Let's see. Thoughts on Mega as a cloud storage option? There's actually a lot of cloud storage options out there. Mega is one, Sync.com is one, pCloud is another. Gosh, you could put others in the comments if you wanted to. Like, it's interesting because some of them kind of market themselves as secure, whereas I wouldn't necessarily trust completely every single one of them. The big thing is, how can you share files securely? And I think Mega is a good one, honestly. Yeah, same with even OneDrive, Dropbox, all of these. They're great as options to be able to store. It's just you need to be very intentional about how you do it. All right. Here we go. I've used Proton Drive since its inception. I will never keep anything in Google Drive, OneDrive, or Dropbox because I have zero confidence that my data remains my data. I get that. Everybody has a different tolerance for this type of stuff. So you need to find where you fall on that spectrum and then own it. Own it, and don't be ashamed of it, because I've got a lot of people that are like, that even think that the way that I've set it up is a ridiculous way, and it's just it's how you feel most comfortable securing your data. All right. And one thing I didn't talk about, by the way, is like NAS systems. That's something I'm really starting to get into. Essentially just doing your own cloud storage on your home network. And that is becoming more and more popular. I'm going to be hopefully trying to connect with Unify, I think is what I forget what the company's name is. I think that's it. But yeah, because I'm intrigued by this idea of truly owning your own data and making sure that there's a secure way to do so. All right. So we had, how can I set up 2FA with Google Drive? 2FA with Google Drive is done in your Google account. So your parent account is where you have to do that. So if you're in Google Drive, you need to go up to the right-hand corner, click your name, and then do, I think it's account security. I'd have to look at it. Let's see. Yeah, it says manage your Google account is where that's at. So you're going to want to do that. And then that's where you can go in and add extra security, take away different types of other 2FA, remove your backup phone number, all that stuff. That can all be done when you manage your Google account. All right. All right. Sign it. It's interesting. I've heard you can set up a dummy PIN code on your phone if officials demand you unlock your phone. The alternative PIN would wipe the phone. It would be cool. There are phones that do that. I just reviewed one called the unplugged phone that does have that emergency pin. The iPhone does not have that. The closest thing you have is the option to turn on something where after 10 failed attempts, it would wipe the phone. So it's not quite a dummy pin code, but you're right. There is something similar to that. Somebody asks, what's my opinion about pCloud? I mean, I've heard a lot of good things from people that I respect that use pCloud. So I have no personal opinion on it, but I don't have anything negative to say about it. That's a very non-answer. Do you recommend Dropbox? I recommend Dropbox just as much as I would recommend Google Drive or OneDrive, in that it is a great place, very convenient to store your files unless you have an enterprise account. There are a lot of things that they don't offer that they offer to enterprise users, and therefore I would be very careful about how you store files in something like Dropbox. So it's not whether I recommend it or don't recommend it, it's more about how you use Dropbox within your cloud storage strategy. All right. I've run into situations where they only allow a security key, I'm assuming a security key, or use the authenticator and can't create a secondary backup. It's annoying, but I can't find alternatives. I think there are some places where that's true. I think they're few and far between. They're becoming less and less. Like 2FA, especially using security keys to enforce encryption, it essentially it makes it all the more important because you are now owning your own security. You're owning your data. There is no reset password when you're using a 2FA only like that. And so a lot of these companies have been very, very careful to add in recovery and backup options. And so this is becoming less and less of a problem. Let's see here. Yeah, somebody says all of them are safe and secure as long as you use CryptoMator before uploading. Essentially what he's saying, he or she is saying that, as long as you encrypt the file before it gets encrypted in the cloud, then in other words, you own that encryption key. And he's right? You can use something like CryptoMator or VeriCrypt before you upload anything. It does slow things down slightly. I'd be curious to know what these people think, or this person thinks, as to whether, it does take a little bit of extra processing power, especially for larger files, to be able to encrypt that and then upload it, but it is an option for sure. Ubiquity, that's it. Ubiquity Unify, thank you. Does Proton Drive have an auto sync feature like Google Photos? I think it does. I'm opening up real quick just to make sure that I'm not telling you wrong, because I thought I turned it on. Yeah, so it's keeping all of my photos backed up, auto synced automatically, and so all of those are up there. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've loved about using the Proton Drive app on my phone, is that it does keep my photos backed up and synced. So that's been really good. All right. Well, that looks like it's it for now. Again, I want to thank Proton Drive for sponsoring this video. I hope that you learned something beyond just Proton Drive, but you learned something about securing your cloud storage. And if this was helpful, maybe this was a little too basic for you, but it might be something that worth sharing with your parents or with somebody else that you know that maybe isn't quite as tech savvy, that could, that does just use their cloud storage as a junk drawer and just throws everything into it. So thank you to them. If you want to open up your first account for just $1, go to allthingssecure.com/ProtonDrive, and that's where you can get that deal. I just really love and appreciate my partnership with Proton, whether it's Proton VPN, Proton Mail. They make a lot of great security and privacy products, and Proton Drive is just one of them. I use their all-in-one suite, but you can just use Proton Drive if you wanted to. That is entirely possible.